I can't do it. What made me think I possibly could? Is this what you are saying to yourself when you want to do something new? My friend, that's called imposter syndrome. And we are going to give you some tips on how to break that mold. Roll the intro video, please. Hello, everybody. Where are my pets? Where's Joanna?
Sorry, I knew I was first forgetting something.
Hey.
Hey, Believe Sisters. How's it going this week?
This is an exciting episode. I think we need to get right in since we have two exciting guests today.
Yes, I love it.
We're
Yes,
talking about a very important topic today, and that's imposter syndrome. And the reason why I think it's so important that we talk about this right after we're getting everybody all excited for this anthology project, because one of the first things that keep you from getting started a lot of the time is you think, why would anyone want to listen to me? Why is this even important that someone would want to hear this? And so I think our two guests today are going to highlight some of that importance. Joanna?
Hey, yeah. So we're going to start with Faith Young. She is an author who shared her hero's journey from a devastating health issue to regaining her health, her mobility, and her will to succeed in life. And she shared it in an amazing book. So she's the first person that we're highlighting as far as who has successfully participated in an anthology. And then I'll give you a teaser because after Faith, we're going to bring on another guest.
Hey, Faith.
Welcome, Faith.
Hi.
Can you hear us
okay?
How
are you all doing? Yeah, can you hear
awesome.
me?
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Here you are,
Hi.
yes. And so, Faith, we want to show people about like how a person gets started. You know, we're having a workshop next week that believe you can get started on a book.
Tonight. Hey, tonight?
Yes, tonight. Tonight. The 10th. Whoops. So tell us about your journey, Faith. How did you get started to actually be a part of an anthology?
I'm very fortunate to have an incredible community of friends. One of them who is an author already, Tammy Lowe. She's mentioned she's in the book. She put together her anthology, said Brave, this is ours. And at Path to Gratitude, there's 8 women, and we each wrote different stories of, our struggles, what we came through, and how we came through on the other end with gratitude.
That's powerful. Yeah, please elaborate. What does gratitude mean to you?
See, there's the living in gratitude, right? And then being grateful for things. I didn't realize that those are two separate things, right? So you can be grateful for the things in your life, or you can be in a state of gratitude. And we were in a program, like, similar to what I'm sure you all have gone through, or different coaching program. And that taught us all together, manifesting and inspired and dreaming, and why not me,
Yeah. Beautiful.
What was your experience with the anthology project? What was some of your favorite highlights of the whole thing?
It was life-changing. I would say the highlights were probably the most terrifying parts too, or was the editing. Okay, so the editing process was both, gut wrenching and also incredibly fulfilling. So, it's hard to, have those two feelings, but very much it was truly a labor of love, I would say, for a lot of us, for me particularly. Imposter syndrome came up many times. So many times I wanted to quit, right? Who am I? Who am I to share this story of my life? Wait, I might be the perfect person to share the story of my life, right?
Right? Who else can, really, right?
But it
So,
creeps in there.
what was it like, having an opportunity to have a platform and tell your story and know that this is going to be something that was published and people were going to see? I mean, this is like documentation. It's not just sitting around the campfire and telling folklore at this point. This is something much greater than that.
Oh gosh, we had international sales. We made the top sellers list on Amazon within 48 hours.
Great.
Awesome.
We're doing really great. We have the group too itself is made of Floridians, Canadians, New York. One of the girls, I can't remember where she's from, California. She was from California. So I mean, we're from all over, being a part of this. I think that's something we forget that year COVID gave us, right? Was community online, right?
That's what
Yes.
brought us together. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I met Heidi. That's how I met Fran. And that's met you first, Faith.
Yeah.
And the community that we started in together. I remember the fact that we had sisters in believing. And I don't know if that's trademark, but we are the Believe sisters. But tell us about the power of community and
Oh,
the role that played.
so I can tell you the process it took us a little longer than we anticipated, right? She had planned out so many months, and having an amazing organizer was the key. We definitely wouldn't have finished it without having that one person, Tammy, saying, okay, this is due here, this is due here, and then she had her backup, Angela Mercado, who is just fantastic with editing as well. You could get the logical perspective. Having two perspectives, I think, when you're editing as well, editing something so personal was important, because it's my life, right? Like that happened. And as you're writing it, your body forgets it's not happening right now. But I had I had somatic symptoms writing this. I actually went through a period of almost 2 weeks where I couldn't physically type. Like that's how much my body didn't want this story to come out. But because of this community, I could tell them, this is what I'm feeling right now. I'm depressed. I can't type. I can barely pull my pants up right now. How am I going to do this? Right. And I'm getting teary, but just by saying that and being vulnerable, they're like, oh, well, I can help you. We can get on Zoom and we can edit together. And I was like, what? And it got done.
Like, oh my God, thank you.
Yes.
Like, you're going to help me? Like,
that is the true power of community.
We thought about we're going to have some type of office hours or some type, where, hey, come into the Zoom room. One of the Believe sisters is going to be here, just holding space for one another, holding your hand, just being here. And it's like, yes, we're going to be productive. We're going to work this out, a little bit at a time. I think it definitely takes that.
yes.
Unless you've written, a novel, unless you've gotten the craft down, that 10,000 hours of mastery yet. It can definitely help them.
Writing about personal thing, my specific story was about my two instances with unwanted pregnancy and date rape, and what I chose with both situations. So, in both situations, I thought I had dealt with therapy, all good, resolved. I can write about this. No, You know, things were coming up that I was like, I didn't remember for one. I was like,
Ah,
and thank God I'm in therapy now, because I would literally take, a couple chapters or whatever I was writing, a couple paragraphs, and take it to therapy and be like, okay, this
mm.
brought this up. Oh my, and I didn't even realize there was still work to be done when I was writing it.
So that
And then,
sounds like that's a positive thing in a way. It helps you to
it really was.
continue doing the work, right?
Oh gosh, without the work of, being in gratitude and knowing, what you have versus what you need, things like that was what got me through, to be able to have those moments of, okay, no, I'm safe. I'm in my home, or I'm wherever I'm at. I went to my friends' houses, other places even to write, right? Because I'm like, oh, I can't write here. Maybe it's writer's block. What is all the things? And I'm grateful for that too. I had a couple of friends in the group offer me their home. I'm going to be away for the weekend. You can go crash there and have some quiet time. And, so it's, yeah.
I love all
Beautiful.
these things that you're talking about because it's something that we haven't quite talked about yet as a benefit of writing some of these deeper, impactful stories is a lot of the impact of writing this story starts with you. And like you said, realizing there was more healing to be done. And I would be even willing to bet that as more people come up to you and are like, I read your story and this is what it meant to me, you're going to feel even more healing as you realize that story is helping other people.
Yeah. And I had said it to him, like, if this helps one person, I'll be happy. If I've made one person feel less alone, I'll feel good about myself, good about what we did.
And I just heard this weekend at an event, the Global Vision Conference, that when we hear other people's experiences, that acronym is HOPE, HOPE, hear other people's experiences. And so you can give someone hope when they read your story. And here you are on the Believe Retreat live stream, just sharing what happens when you have the courage to just continue to stick to it, and it facilitates even more healing, a deeper level of healing, so that you're continuing on your journey to wholeness maybe you thought you would never have.
And honestly, I didn't know I needed. I thought it was healed. So it got you writing. And when I started writing, I was angry, right? The political climate was so hot. Well, it still is. But at the time, it was shortly after the election, and I was coming from a place of anger. So my story did a complete 180, as it was finished. But through the process, I told everybody I literally had 3 documents open. One was a timeline. I had to create a timeline because when I went through it in my head, I'm like, I thought this trauma all happened within like a year. And as
Mhm.
I started going through it, I'm like, wait, that was like 2 years. So much stuff, so many other things happened at this
Mm.
time that I had just forgotten because it was all meshed together with that trauma. So just even that, like I had a document of my timeline, I had the document I was writing, and then a document titled Notes for My Therapist.
Ah,
Sometimes be like,
yes.
oh, yeah, I'm going to copy and paste. We're going to talk about that next year.
That's what unpacked it was packed like this, and you unpacked it. You had to
Yes.
separate those pieces.
Oh, I didn't even, yeah, and there were more boxes in that box. So I was like, oh,
I,
I can
I
write
Well,
another
really,
chapter about writing the chapter.
when I wrote
Wow.
my
and
first
I,
book, I started angry and blaming everybody. And by the time I got to the end of the book and it was published, I'm like, oh, you know what? Everything that happened was for my own good. It all taught me a valuable lesson. And now my book can help teach other people the lessons so they don't have to go through it.
yes.
Beautiful.
And I think that's a great segue to bring on our next guest
Yes, we're going to put you
because
backstage, Faith, and
Thank
then we're
you.
going to switch you out. Thank you so much. We're going to hear from you later for the question of the day.
So I'm going to bring on Jeff Glauser right now. Hey, Jeff.
Jeff,
Hello, ladies.
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to be your belief brother today.
Thank
I'm
you.
Oh,
honored.
yes.
And boy, Faith is a tough act to follow. I mean, such a heartfelt story, and such a perfectly named person too, because she kept the faith,
Yeah.
and look where it got her. So, it's always
Oh,
inspiring to hear that.
yes. And, you reminded me too. We got to put a link in the chat so that everybody can look up that book. But
Yep.
Jeff, you have an
Yes.
event coming up on Saturday, and it is such a perfect event for helping people that might be interested in collaborating with us on this anthology project to get some advice on how to write their story in a compelling way with a lot of impact. So, you want to tell us a little bit more about your event Saturday?
Sure. For those of you who are local to the greater Jacksonville area, I invite you to come on out to. Actually, I got to remember. I put it in there. Which library was it again? Do you have it in there?
It's
Oh, there it is.
The
Rivers.
Yes,
Yep, gotcha.
Southeast Regional Branch Library in Jacksonville, where I will be speaking about how to market yourself using the hero's journey. But that also applies to writing the story. So, the hero's journey, for those who are not aware, is a framework that was put together by a man by the name of Joseph A. Campbell many moons ago, well over a half a century ago, which to this day still remains the go-to framework for, I'd say, 90% of all screenplays that are in existence. But it's also something that's easily transferable to businesses, to brands, and to any type of story writing that you're doing to follow those same beats along the way. So I'm going to be speaking about how you can take those beats and transfer it over to something that makes a deeper, more meaningful impact with your intended audience. So they are going to be more apt to take action when you put yourself out there and you frame yourself as the guide as opposed to the hero, which is a big oversight that many of us do when we market ourselves, is that we try to be the hero. The reality is that nobody wants to do business with the hero because they want to be the hero. So how can you kind of have that role reversal, and kind of have that a paradigm shift, so you can really become the Yoda instead of the Skywalker, if you will, and serve in that trusted guide role that's going to help the heroes. Because here's the reality, and this is where it ties into the whole topic of imposter syndrome, is that heroes are by nature very flawed characters. And when we're talking about a story, the hero starts out as someone that has some sort of aspirational identity. They have some sort of goal. They want to, they want to win the love of their life, or they want to win the game, or they want to beat the bad guy. But as we know, if there's no problem, there's no plot. So there's always going to be some sort of obstacle that gets in their way. And too often in real life, we try to go over, around, through, across that obstacle as opposed to facing it head on, because of that fear of what the potential repercussions might be if we put ourselves in this vulnerable position. The reality is that people are craving that type of authenticity, that type of vulnerability, because it's relatable. Nobody can relate to somebody who's flawless, who, everything always just comes their way. And it makes for a really boring story too, right?
Yes,
So
it
True.
to
does.
have that arc, that character arc, where you have this goal and then something gets in the way and it knocks you down and it knocks you out. But now we get to kind of strap in and watch how you create that comeback story, and how you go from where you were to where you need to be, is really why we all stay tuned in, and why we watch the movie, and why we read the book, and why we write the story, because we want that same sort of feeling of being inspired to happen to us when we see it ourselves.
Great point about positioning ourselves as the guide instead of the hero, because everyone wants to be their own hero. That is so important. And you're going to show people how to do it, even in a literary sense, right? Literally,
Yeah.
they're crafting with the writing process. Because tell us about your background. You're a screenwriter. Share us a success story, one of your biggest successes as a writer that we can celebrate with you today.
You know, it's funny. So for someone who spent a good chunk of his career helping other people tell their story, there was a long time when I didn't feel like I was qualified to tell my own. And I used to think that imposter syndrome was just this phase, something that people outgrew with experience. But the truth is, it doesn't care how many years you've worked or how successful you appear from the outside. It shows up whenever you try to do something that matters, but the doubt surfaces. And that's not something that just happens overnight. You know, you wake up one day and say, well, I don't know. It's just something that becomes ingrained over the course of time. You know, you get one setback and then you get another setback, and then you tend to link them together, whether it be through logic or not. And before you know it, you have this narrative in your head, this toxic narrative in your head that's telling you things that aren't based on reality and aren't based on evidence. And even if there are certain instances where you say, well, I came up short here, I came up short there, it's still this lesson that needs to be learned, not this experience that needs to be swept under the carpet. So for me, I'd say, you know, just any time that I'm being my authentic self when I'm writing, I consider that a success, because it was something that I avoided for quite some time. I've written memoirs for the better part of the last 30 years. And whenever I need proof of concept or some sort of evidence that, you know what, I've come a lot further than I really thought I had, I look back on that. I mean, even as recently as a year or two ago, just the seismic impact and the difference that my life is now compared to what it was. I mean, Heidi can attest to this too. We connected, I think originally, 5-6 years ago. I was at I like to call it the end of Act 2 moment. So when you're talking about a script, there's that point of no return where it's like the world's all coming at you at once. So, you know how everyone talks about 2020, and Faith alluded to this too. It was like the year from hell for a lot of people, for good reason. 2019 was that year for me. So in a way, it was a blessing in disguise, because I had a year head start. So all within a several month span, I got laid off from my second job in less than a year. It was the beginning of the end of my marriage. I was hemorrhaging money. I, gotten, caught up in this silly legal battle. It was just like whatever could go wrong did. And it's because I continued to attract that. So the more that I've learned about the law of attraction and manifesting, I realized it works both ways.
Yes.
You get what you think about, whether you like it or not. So you might as well figure out what you want to think about to get what you really want, because you can't believe everything you think. That's the other problem, is that when you start giving it credence is when it starts to take on a life of its own. So a big thing for me was building up that level of awareness, is just kind of catching myself in the moment and realizing, wait, is that really the narrative that I want to give myself? Or is that just the narrative that I'm believing in the moment, and how I need to then switch that belief and redirect? So that's a big part of it for me, is really kind of, unprogramming myself, and then building up these new habits that are going to propel me in the right direction, and also allow me to then serve as this example for the people that I help. And the more that I can do that, the more that it just kind of reinforces that new narrative and allows me to then, kind of proceed in the direction that I desire.
Oh, I love that.
We've talked about that before. Writing a chapter in an anthology will get that idea in your brain and program you to know, I'm an author now. So when you want to write your own solo book, you're already thinking, I'm an author. And it's not, the imposter syndrome doesn't move in headstrong because you've already done it.
Absolutely. Yeah. But even then, it's a process. You can't unprogram something that took years to reprogram just like that. So, they say, with everything, it's a practice. And that's the same thing as far as whether it's becoming an author, an artist, an entrepreneur. It's not going to be something where you just flip a switch and everything just comes into place. Again, that would be a really boring story too.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where if you begin to shift that mindset where you now believe that you either win or you learn, there are no losses. The loss is a learning experience that you're then going to be able to parlay into that next big goal that you hit, that next big obstacle that you have to overcome. Now, all of a sudden, you are prepared for it. You're now ready to kind of embrace it because hey, all right, this is the next thing that the hero needs to face, that needs to encounter in order for them to get to that quote unquote happily ever after.
It's so true. I was thinking about Jeff 3.0, but really, if we're continuing on the process, there's going to be a 4.0, 5.0.
20, 30,
We're going to
40.
continue. Yes,
Yes.
constant and never ending. I
It's
was
an
going to
ongoing
bring,
anthology.
yes, I didn't, I was going to bring Faith back from backstage. Do you see her back there? Here she
Yep,
is.
I got her. Yep.
Thank you. So now we're all together looking more and more like the Brady Bunch.
We need Alice in the
Nothing wrong
middle.
with that.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. But let me just
Wait a
I
minute.
love
I'm
yes how
Alice.
now see we were not going to default you to Alice, I promise. It's but
Alice
this
was
is
I
it's
very
think we
below.
just came up with our Halloween costumes. But Faith, I want to hear a little bit more from you about imposter syndrome. And, as you were going through the writing process, I did hear you talk a lot about leaning on the group and having the group help you out. But was there any other methods or ways that you kind of noticed, stopped, and said, you know what? This is not the right story to be telling myself right now?
Many moments like that, and it would take me back to the people in the group, though. Like, so even if I didn't call them, didn't text them, didn't chat, I could sit there in my frustration and say, okay, is this true? What would Angela say? What would Tammy say? What would Trish, what would they say if I asked them? Okay, they'd tell me I'm being, and I could even have the conversation in my head because, yeah, who is more qualified to tell my story than me?
I love it. You questioned yourself. You cross-examined the stinking thinking.
You have to, right? Because, yeah, it was. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, okay, I'm sitting here by myself. These thoughts are all in my head. But yeah, but they're there and they can take you down. And I mean, there were a few times that did, but that's what the group was for. And then taking myself back out of it.
Well,
And I think to
kudos to
Jeff's
you.
point too, I was thinking about this today, about how I feel like most of my life I was trying to take the roller coaster of life and straighten out the track to make it a smoother ride. But now I've realized that I just need to allow myself to enjoy the whole ride instead of freaking out when like the 3 in a row upside down loop-de-loos come. And sometimes you take that friend on a roller coaster too, or they're on the roller coaster of life, you just happen to be in the seat next to them, and while they're screaming their head off.
Kind of like this retreat when I asked you to do a retreat with me.
Exactly. Francine's like, just hold my hand while we go through the loop-de-loops. So I'm like, okay, because I can't go through these loop-de-loops without a hand either.
And we have a community, a Believe Retreat. So we're, after the show, we're going to send you a link and invite you to post a comment about your experience or any additional takeaways. You know how we always think about an extra point or two after the tape rolls, right? Or after we start recording. So we have a community where we would love to just share with you. You could share your thoughts and people can interact. We have some folks watching us today, and they want to meet you, so they can come into our community and they can meet the two of you, and who knows, set up a one-on-one, get to know you better, maybe invite you to speak, because the writing and the speaking, this all goes together in sharing our message. So, and I just thank both of you for sharing
Wait a
so
minute. You
freely.
haven't heard Jeff's imposter syndrome story yet.
Ah.
Which one?
Your favorite. Which was the most impactful to you or somebody else in your life?
The most impactful. I've had a couple career pivots in my life, and I would say that again, going back to that time period, that 2019, 2020, where I was just at that crossroads, was kind of the needed rock bottom. It was one of those where, all right, I've got nowhere else to go but up. I've got two small kids at that time that were counting on me to get my act together. That was my primary motivation. And that was my comeuppance moment where I said, okay, I need to do something, that if it doesn't propel me forward, it at least prevents me from regressing further back. And this actually links once again our friend Heidza Lin back in the equation, because what it required was for me to develop these daily habits that I committed to, that became my lifestyle, that became my anchor, and that eventually also became a business model that the two of us partnered up with for a while, and we'll hopefully return back to at some point soon. But it was one of those things where it was a lot of trial and error. And I came up originally with, I think, about 24 different things that I thought were necessary for me to have the quality of life that I wanted. And I ranked each one from about 0 to 5 as far as how well I did. In other words, I completely overcomplicated the darn thing. But through a course of trial and error over several weeks, over a couple months, I was able to whittle that down to 10 things. And instead of how well I did or how much I did, it was, did I do it or did I not do it? And it didn't matter how well. It didn't matter how much. It just mattered that I was able to check off that box and keep that chain going. And to this day, 6 years later, I'm still doing those 10 habits. I still have my spreadsheet and I still check it off. And I'll tell you something, there's enough of a sample size now where if I'm not guaranteed to have a great day going 10 for 10, I'm at least guaranteed not to have a bad one. And that in and of itself is a major success. So I would say that was the biggest turning point for me, is that I turned inward and I said, all right, what can I do from a very basic level, from a very foundational level, that will at least give me the stability that I need to then get out of my own way and then start once again moving in the direction that I desire.
Yes, make a list, a
Checking those
to-do
And check it
list.
twice.
Yes.
in those boxes. And
You guys have shared.
that's a great tip I want to leave everybody. If you feel like you're suffering from imposter syndrome and it causes writer block and you want to write, make a list of everything you've accomplished in your life. You had to have at least got 1A in your whole career in school. You probably graduated high school. You may even have a degree. You had a job at one time that was successful, whether you like the one you're working at or not. Put every little small success and then check the box. It'll give your brain something to say, woohoo, I did it.
And that list, aren't you thankful? Express gratitude for each and everything on that list. And if you have another list of of the things that you've gotten rid of that didn't serve you well, you're thankful for all that too, right? Because we're
By the way,
grateful.
Joanna, gratitude is one of the top things on that daily list. So I couldn't agree with
Excellent.
you more. If we
Right.
don't have
And
that, what do
faith.
we have?
We did
Yes.
And what
something
you're
that
talking
too.
about right now
Bad
is
egg.
some little breadcrumbs for what we're going to be talking about tonight in our first event for the Believe You Can Anthology collaboration that is happening on Zoom tonight at 7 p.m. And I'll put the link so you can get your ticket in the chat in just a second. But what we're talking about, imposter syndrome, and just some of the things that we've been telling ourselves, just our self-judgment, our judgment about other people or the situation, these kind of things have been holding us back from telling our story and keeping us from getting started. So tonight we are going to be talking about, some lists you can make, some other things that you can do that maybe don't make it feel so much like you're getting to work and we're writing the book and all of that stuff, but really kind of feel more fulfilling as you're doing it. Something that you can enjoy the entire process while you're working on it. before we leave, I want to mention that next week we have Manesh Baxi coming on as our guest. He has a podcast and has also participated in anthology projects like the one that we're working on. And Jeff, I also want to remind everybody that if you're in the Jacksonville, Florida area, you want to go see Jeff talking about the hero's journey. Man, I put that somewhere in the chat. There it is. River City Writers. It's at 1:30 to 3:30, room C of the Southeast Regional Branch Library. So come check that out. And while Joanna is starting the close here and taking us out, I'm just going to put in the chat
Yes.
the link to get the tickets for tonight so you can come
That's
collect.
right. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to see you tonight. Believe you can start writing your story. Because remember, if you can conceive it, you can believe it and therefore achieve it. So from the head
To the heart.
To the hands.
yes, you
You
can.
Yeah.
Woo, we'll do it. Thank you, Faith and Jeff. What a fabulous show. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for coming.
thank
We'll
you.
see you
For
in
having
the
me.
Heights